Doesn't acupuncture equally go back that far?
So it's funny when we quote our Bible of Chinese medicine,
Right.
it's roughly about 2,700 years old, right? So we call that the Yellow Emperor's Internal Classics. However, we do have evidence. They found scrolls in caves going back to talking about needle therapy, in some cases almost 9,000 years ago. So yes,
9,000 years?
yes. And at that point, it was probably, I'm hitting you with a sharp rock. We're not talking about what we would see in a clinic today. And the medicine has evolved. So some of these scrolls, right? I mentioned 12 channels. Some of these scrolls had 7 channels, 9 channels, 11 channels. So as practitioners kind of put the systems together and had more feedback from patients and noticed more things clinically, they kind of filled in those lines. You know, you mentioned hormones, and I have to say, one of the biggest areas that we see in Chinese medicine is women's health, specifically around pregnancy and fertility. And they did not know specifically, what hormones were involved, but they did have this concept of special substances. They knew there must have been something to trigger these reactions in the body. Even in Taoism, even in these practices, if males wanted to increase their testosterone, but their vitality, their vigor, they would do things like testicular massage. And we talked about, how they were doing hormone replacement. One of the ways was they were drinking pubescent male urine.
I'm glad you bring that up, Dr. Tom, because I suspect when they were doing this hormonal therapy, they specifically said that if you took the young male, 20 years old or so, has over 100 different hormones. And I think what they were doing, because I read the book, but it didn't say exactly how they delivered it, but you could take urine and mix it into some kind of a cream. These days, a liposome, like an oil, ester, and rub it in the skin, and you would absorb it. And they were taking the young females, 20 years old, and rub it into the seniors, the urine, and getting hormone response, which is bioidentical.
Isn't that amazing? Because and this sounds gross, right? We talk about fecal transplants, right? The gut biome, going back several thousand years in China, they had something sometimes they call it the soiled underpants. Sometimes they call it the yellow soup. If you had diarrhea that was unchecked back in the day before antibiotics, there's a good chance you could die, right? So what they would do is they would find somebody who had healthy bowel movements, and they'd take their underwear and they'd put it in water and not necessarily boil it to denature the bacteria or kill the bacteria, warm it up enough to actually loosen that up and then have the sick patient, and this is the crazy part. When I looked it up to present this lecture, here I am on PubMed, and I pulled down a treatment of C. diff with gut biome therapy. They actually said, we think it came from here, and we were able to do it. Even stem cells, man. As mammals, right, we've kind of modeled things off of nature in Chinese medicine. So they would always feed the women placenta. But what does the placenta have in it? It has cord blood in it. It has, so if you're getting that fresh, you're just doing stem cell right back to the mom. Now, what they were doing is they would take it in patients that had severe diseases, right? There was a time when you could buy dried placenta out of China, and it wasn't even that long ago. And you would use it for severe cases, people that were completely depleted. We would say their essence was down, right? They might be premature aged. They might, have cancer. They might have these things. You need a lot in your tank to actually fight. They would give them human placenta.